Hello, good morning. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. This is kind of an awkward way to do a presentation, but I think we've all been used to using Zoom and these types of things over the past 14 months or so. But if at any time you guys can't hear me or the presentations aren't coming through, I'm sitting here right next to Natalie, so feel free to just shoot her a chat and just let me know and we can try and make some adjustments along the way. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here. This time is for you. So I'm gonna go through some prepared slides, but if there's some things in here that I haven't covered that you would like to get more information on or you'd like to have a discussion on, as was said, just please put them in the chat and we'll set aside some time at the end to go through those. And lastly, I just also wanted to thank Rodney and his team for putting this together. I think it's great to bring all of us together and share best practices and try to get greater impact in what we do. And also the team here at Plywood People for all the work they've done to set this up. So thanks. And here, let me try and get started with sharing my slides here real quick. Let's see. Okay, hopefully you guys can see a slide of me and my family. So just real quick, so I've been at Chick-Fil-A about 2 years, started in July of last year. Married for 19 years, 5 kids, ages 6 to 16. This is a picture of us, our last day. We moved to the Atlanta area from Pasadena. So this is our last day in California. We went to a baseball game with the San Francisco Giants. So this is us there in July of 2019. Kids are older now, or bigger now. My son there is about as tall as I am and is counting the days until he's taller than I am. It's a daily thing. But before being at Chick-fil-A, I was at Disney for about 15 years and had a myriad of roles there, worked in corporate social responsibility for the global parks and resorts business, worked for Bob Iger as his vice president of corporate communications, worked at Disney World as the head of government relations, worked at Disney World also as the chief spokesperson for the Disney World Resort. Prior to that, I was press secretary for Jeb Bush for his second term. And prior to that, worked on Capitol Hill. And my first job out of school, I was a newspaper reporter. So I've kind of been on both sides of the reporter's notebook. And then I'm from the Midwest. I went to school at Northwest Missouri State, got a degree in journalism, and then got my master's at the University of Florida. So that's just a little bit about me to get us going. And then, like I said, this time is for you. So we want to make sure that, everything that we cover here is things that you find valuable. If there's things that you have a particular question about, please put them in the chat. I can't see the chat. I can't see you. So, if there's things just for housekeeping, just put them in the chat and then, we can go from there. So just to get us started off, a couple things I thought would be good for us to cover is, the role of stakeholder engagement in helping us to generate media, how important it is to be the expert in part of the solution. And there we're going to talk about being the experts in part of the solution, not just in the particular area where you're focused on, but in broader needs that your local area may have. We'll talk about the pros and cons of social media and things to watch out for and how to use that. And then we'll talk about ways that, utilizing all of these tools can help you to generate media coverage fairly consistently. I caught the end of Rodney's main stage talk, and one of the things that he said that really struck me was that point about ego versus impact. And what this is designed to do, this talk about generating media, is to help you increase your impact, whether that's getting out in more sustained coverage to help you with fundraising, or to open more opportunities to serve, or those sorts of things. So, one big question I think that's really impactful and important for you to answer for yourself is, by generating media coverage, what do you want to have happen? Is it so people have a better understanding of the work you do? Is it so that you can open more doors to serve more people? Is it so that you can increase fundraising? those answers and that question is going to be really important to help guide you through this process. So let's jump right into stakeholder engagement. So, as I was preparing for this, I was doing some research online, and I found this study that was done by the Center for Public Leadership out of the University of North Carolina. And it was fascinating to me because what the study did was they interviewed about 100 people in local government from around the country, and they interviewed about 100 nonprofit leaders from around the country. And they just asked them, they asked them each, how well do you work with the other? What's your level of partnership? And one of the main findings of the study was that there wasn't a lot of partnership, and there were, both government and nonprofits were leaving opportunities on the table for increased impact. And, it's a trap I think we all fall into. We do our jobs day in and day out, and it's very familiar to us. And we have to kind of be able to detach a little bit, take a step back, and recognize that not everyone knows the impact that we have. Not everyone knows the work that we do. And I thought this quote from one of the county commissioners that they interviewed was really telling. It says the county manager and the board don't have enough understanding about what a nonprofit is and how they work. And I was expecting this quote to kind of be, not everyone on the board knows what, this particular nonprofit does or the level of impact of the nonprofits. But, this person was saying they don't know what a nonprofit is. And I think it's really telling to kind of understand and detach a little bit and say, part of what I need to do here as I'm engaging with stakeholders and going out in the community and going out in areas where I don't typically serve is being very clear and concise about what it is we do, why we do it, and the impact that we have. The other thing I think is really important as we think about stakeholder engagement is the importance of creating advocates. Here in Atlanta, we have Leadership Atlanta, done by the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. Every place I've lived, Florida, California, St. Louis, there's a similar program to this. Personally, I think these things are brilliant because it brings people from the community in. They all get to know each other. They spend time together. They go around in the different areas of the community. They get to know the community, and it creates this network of supporters, not only for the community, but for the chamber or whatever group is putting it on. And I put that in here just because I think it's a great example of things, you all could do depending on, your needs to create your own kind of leadership network. Doesn't need to be groups of people at one time. It could be just one person at a time, and reach out and say, hey, could you dedicate an hour once a month to come and spend time with us so we can show you what we're doing? Because I think you'd be really surprised at the impact or the need or those sorts of things. And over time, that kind of network that you would create will be unbelievable advocates for you. And so, I've seen this in the different communities in which I've lived, not only for, the places that the Leadership Atlanta team goes and sees, but the level of support that the chamber gets for creating this opportunity. So, it doesn't have to be kind of in the model of a Leadership Atlanta or something like that, but just find opportunities to create advocates. And the more diverse that those advocates can be, both in terms of areas in which they support the community, what they do, private sector, public sector, if they're, in office, if they're formally in office, all those types of things I think will help you very much in the long run, both create more impact or more opportunities for impact and help you generate more coverage. And then the last point I wanted to make here is stakeholder engagement is part of playing the long game. You don't start this and then expect advocates overnight. This is like planting seeds. Some seeds will grow really fast. Some seeds you think aren't going to grow at all, and then all of a sudden they start producing a bunch of fruit. And then there are other seeds that you plant that just don't grow at all. And that's kind of what stakeholder engagement is like. And it's really important to stay focused on the long game, because you may feel like you're toiling at one point, but you'll look back, a year or two later, and you'll have this network of very highly placed, very, very passionate supporters for your cause. So real quick here, just to wrap up stakeholder engagement, just a couple of best practices that I've found throughout my career, whether it's from a government standpoint or from a private sector standpoint is first, I really can't stress enough the importance of sharing. You really need to share more than you think you need to share, but you need to be very purposeful about it. I recently went on a trip and met a nonprofit leader that was helping women and children who were coming out of a domestic abuse situation get back on their feet. And I was shocked at the amount of support they were getting from local elected officials and other leaders. And I was asking them how they were generating that. And it was a combination, they said, of bringing people in. They operated this kind of sustainable farming thing where the kids and moms would work, and they would bring people in to help volunteer and work in the farm while the kids were doing so. And they had a job placement program that they utilized the nonprofit or the for-profit companies that they were helping place these moms in to help get them on their feet, to utilize their social media and their platforms to help get their story out. So I thought that was a good example of consistently bringing in people, showing them what you're doing, and then letting others tell that story. The other point here, point 2, pay attention to what's going on in your whole community, not just your area of focus. I've been a part of boards and things throughout parts of the country. And, what is really important here is expanding your influence and building your network. And, whether it's a major local board that you can get a part of, or helping something in your local neighborhood. The more people see you engaged and see people that are affiliated with your group engaged in things other than what your group does, the more it kind of builds the story truthfully that you are very passionate about not only your area of focus, but the community at large. And that breeds more people wanting to support you. It also breeds more people reaching out to you to see if you could help in other areas. And then the last thing here is just be transparent. It's really important, generating more media coverages. You'll get media telling the good stories, but then they'll also be, looking for things that may not be so good. And so the more you can be transparent and proactively transparent, the more you're going to ward off those sorts of things. So, just little things like if you have an oversight committee for example, if you can get a local CPA to serve on that board. Utilizing the expertise of the community in areas that are important to you, or you may feel like you don't have enough internal expertise, can be really helpful. So building on that, be the expert. So, I'm sure there are many here on this call that got into nonprofit work because of the money. No, that's clearly not true. The reason that you all do what you do is because you are passionate and you're dedicated about making your community better. And that attribute of dedication shouldn't just be limited to your area of focus. The more involved you get, the more opportunities you have to be in front of not only local leaders and both nonprofit and for-profit, but those that are in office. And that gives you more opportunities to be in front of the media. And we'll talk in a second here about how newsrooms are staffed now and how stories are covered. But you won't have much luck if you just write a press release and send it out cold. But you will have more luck if you if you've developed a personal relationship with local media. It doesn't need to be everyone in your town. It could be one or two just reporters that you've kind of got to know over time through your own work or through getting involved in these other efforts in your community. I think it's really a good way to do this is to get involved in something that may be somewhat tied to your area of focus. You don't want to be out everywhere, and that depletes what you can do for your own board and your own org. But so, for example, if your organization is focused on homelessness, one area that you could maybe help volunteer on is a local workforce board, and then that will give you opportunities not only to influence the workforce board to do programs and get involved in ways that help your constituents, but it will also give you the opportunity to take the platform of the workforce board and say to media or to others in the community, the impact of what the workforce board is doing is going to have this result in the homeless population. And it connects these two very important things. So, the more opportunities you have to become an expert, whether it's, like I said, in a workforce issue that benefits homelessness or tries to end homelessness, or those sorts of things, the more you're going to get your name out there, the more you're going to be seen as, again, someone that is truly interested in the well-being of the community at large, not just singularly focused on one particular area. So social media, I'm sure this is something that, you guys have probably dabbled in or do a lot of, depending on your size and your reach. I got to be honest, to me, social media is kind of a double-edged sword. It's something that I think we need to do, but it's also something that can be really dangerous. And I'll give you some examples. There's no doubt there's a lot of noise out there. And, if you just post news, like every other week or once a month or updates, you're really not going to get much action out of that. And no one's going to be following that. And, they're not going to post or tag or those sorts of things. So, in my experience, the best way to benefit from social media is really to engage others, get others to expand your message. So if you're doing a food giveaway and you can get a local kind of elected official to come, or a local business leader, that either that individual has their own Twitter or Instagram handle that, has a lot of followers, or their business has one, utilize that to help expand your message. You post something, tag them, they repost it, and that will help expand your message quickly and pretty efficiently. The key, though, is to do that repeatedly with a diverse set of leaders. So that's one. Second is work in advance to get others to tell others that you're going to tag them. What you don't want to do is tag someone and then have them not retweet it or not send it out to their followers. And so work out in advance, hey, we'd love to post this picture of this event. Do you mind, sending it out through your channels, either personal or professional? And then, the other thing here that's really important is this creates a really good resource for reporters. So what reporters are doing now more than ever is, when I was a reporter 20 years ago, you'd get a story assigned to you, you would pick up the phone, you'd make phone calls, you'd go out of the building, you'd talk to people, you'd have, a day or two to research and write a story. Now what happens is reporters are told to sit at their desk and look on social media and search for different things to find either sources, find story hooks, those types of things. So the more you can get your story out there on social media and hashtag it, creates an archive that's searchable. And reporters, as they're looking for, if they're doing a story on homelessness, if you've got some hashtags out there and people that are expanding that message, those are going to pop up and they're going to naturally want to call you to kind of get more info or to help their story. So some things to avoid: don't be polarizing or political. Not only does it kind of alienate different groups of people, but, as other for-profit companies are looking to support, they do their own due diligence, and they're going to be looking at your social media channels. If they see things that are, divisive or those types of things, it's going to create a warning flag for them. So it could potentially harm your ability to get more support from a fundraising aspect, and it could also drive away others that may just be interested in volunteering. The same goes with socializing or trying to tie yourself with very politicized figures. That, again, that's kind of the double-edged sword from a nonprofit, from a social media standpoint, because most often the very polarizing figures are the ones with the biggest following. But you just need to be smart about that. And then the last point is, don't use old information. You got to keep this fresh. It doesn't need to be every day. It doesn't need to be every hour, but it needs to be multiple times a week to be really effective. And so, one of the ways you can do that is, if you decide you want to use this, is spend some time before you start posting to build up a pipeline of content. And that way you don't have to be going around every day trying to find something to do or to post or whatever. You can take the time, take a week, a month, whatever you need to build that pipeline of content. And then you can just have someone or yourself send that stuff out, on an as needed basis. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to look real quick at some examples of things that, we've seen here at Chick-fil-A that are good and bad. I'll let you be the judge of what's good and bad, but Teen Challenge here, it's a great organization. We've worked with them before, but this post that the leader of that group did here on the left, is not going to draw more people to the cause, is not going to get more people energized to get involved, and just kind of plants a flag about where he and his organization stand on things that may attract some, but it's also, for all that it's going to attract, it'll probably detract the same amount. Then on the right here is Kaboom, which is, if you're not familiar, Kaboom is a nonprofit, a national nonprofit that builds playgrounds and play spaces for kids throughout the country. So here they have a picture of, the local mayor taking part in what they built. They have some volunteers standing around. Kaboom Twitter handle has about 25,000 followers. The city of Alexandria, Virginia has about 50,000 followers. And the mayor on her personal account has about 15,000 followers. So here it's a really good example of work that they did in the community with volunteers standing by, with local elected support. This shows that it's a national group that got local involvement. So if I was looking at this from a Chick-fil-A standpoint and thinking if we should, get involved with Kaboom, what this tells me is they're not just a national nonprofit that's, coming in and doing whatever they want to do. They're working within the local community to build what's needed. They have local support, and that's, what we want to be a part of. So all this culminates in how do we generate media coverage consistently? And so really I'll tell you a story. When in 2000, I graduated college and I got a job being a reporter in Kansas City, Missouri. When it was a small newspaper. It wasn't the Kansas City Star. It was a regional newspaper that had a subscription of about 100,000 people. And so the newsroom had about 50 people in it. And we would come in each day. We get a story assigned. We'd work on that story, like I said, for a day or two, and we'd publish that story. About 3 years ago, I went with Bob Iger to the headquarters of the LA Times, and we went into the newsroom. We were meeting with the managing editor, and I counted. It was 10 in the morning. There were 4 people in the newsroom. Now, obviously, a good chunk are out, covering their beats or things like that. But the discrepancy from 100,000 circulation newspaper with 50 or so people in the newsroom to a publication like the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times 3 years ago to having 4 in the newsroom is pretty telling. So the days of issuing a tweet or issuing a press release and sending it out and assuming it's going to be seen are over. So if that's what you're doing, don't do that anymore. The best way to do it is first make personal contact. If you don't have a pre-existing relationship, start one. And then when you have something that you think is newsworthy, or you have an event that you would like covered, make personal contact with the reporter or the newsroom. Explain why it's important. Explain who else is going to be there. Give them plenty of time. And this is one of those things where you need to call ahead of time and then call repeatedly. You may feel like you're being kind of annoying, but that's what's needed, because the reporter has about 3 other things that they're working on. They're on deadline, and so you need to kind of make that front and center. Use social media as the hook. We talked about how hashtags can kind of be a good resource for reporters that are doing research, but it's also a good tool for you to use to highlight, what you're going to be doing. So if you're going to have an annual event for a food drive, for example, leading up to that event, be posting photos and stories and things about past food drives that you've done and how you've served, and make the focus the impact, not the event or not the volunteers. The focus needs to be on the impact. Another key point that I've discovered in my career, both as a reporter and as someone that's pitching stories and dealing with reporters, is what may seem like standard operating procedure to you is probably newsworthy to others. So if you have mundane things that you think are mundane, but you just do them so much, or the impact of those things is greater than you would expect, that's potentially newsworthy. So make sure that leaders in your community know about it, have them tweet about it, have them post about it, and use that as a hook to send to reporters. We've talked about partnering with the nonprofit leaders and local leaders to help make your announcement. Demonstrate the impact of your work. And the more you can get others to tell your story, the more support you'll get for your story. And I'll give you just one example from Chick-Fil-A this year, and maybe you guys have seen it, but we were honored that, throughout the pandemic, there were these memes popping up that said, if Chick-fil-A handled vaccine distribution, everyone would have their vaccine, in a week or so. And that, that says a lot about our leaders and the team members that work at those stores. But we had an instance where a local operator was approached out of the blue by the mayor of their town and said, hey, can you help us distribute vaccines? And so the operator sent one of his team members over and didn't do a lot. It was on the spur of the moment, and helped just facilitate people going through and was sharing a smile and those sorts of things. We didn't issue any media about that, but it got picked up on social media and it became an international story. And so that's an example of something that is really standard operating procedure for us, but others saw it as doing something exceptional. And so the more that you can find opportunities like that than what you're doing, and they exist, trust me, they're there, the more it will catch on and the more people will start coming to you naturally for your support and your involvement.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks, Jacob, for your wisdom and sharing a little bit more about just strong PR and media storytelling.